All right, we're live tonight. Here we are, another one of our 76 Capital Leadership Series. Really excited tonight to have not only a really special guest, but a good friend and someone that is really the leader when it comes to the whole sports betting industry. And that's why we have Sara Slane on our show today on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, Wayne. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
People must be desperate if they're watching.
Well, I'll tell you, we've been doing these leadership series events every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, as well as on Sunday nights at 7 o'clock. And it's really been great because we've had this opportunity to talk with leaders in the sports industry like you, and not only just to talk about the hardcore business aspects, but also how you were able to get to where you are in life and in business, and also some of the different things that you've done, and some of the things that you believe are really important to being a leader and making sure that you're doing the right thing, and that's something that we believe in at 76 Capital as investors in the sports tech industry, the esports industry, and of course what we're going to talk about tonight, the sports betting industry. So again, welcome, and I'd love to start off with just really hearing where you grew up and your path, and your initial path within the just from where you grew up and where you went to school at first.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hopefully people have a drink in hand or something to keep it lively. I'll try to be as entertaining as I possibly. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and two younger sisters and a very fervent dad who absolutely loved sports, and never thought that I would end up in Las Vegas, but eventually made my way there. And started off on the political side, and I worked for Catherine Cortez Masto, who's now the senator in Nevada, but I worked on her first attorney general's race, and just really got to know the state, got to know the industries that really fuel the state, which is primarily the gaming industry, and made the transition then over was fortunate enough to then go work for MGM Resorts for 7 years, and so that was
I'm sorry for interrupting. Was that before? Was that during college or after college?
Yeah, I skipped like 10 years in there. I'm trying not to age myself. I went from growing up in Toledo to moving to Las Vegas. No, I made my way to Ohio University. Actually, both my parents and my sisters, my entire family went to school there. Oddly enough, my parents met there. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I love political science. I love government. I majored in political science, and that was actually the one major my dad told me that was the dumbest thing to ever major in, but somehow I had done internships in Washington, D.C., and loved it. And I went from one aisle of the party to the other aisle of the party in 1 year, but eventually made my way back to D.C. after I graduated from college. And see, I just fast forwarded right to Vegas, the exciting part. But I essentially spent like 5 years of my career. Go ahead.
So the reason I ask you that is because Ohio University is so well known as the school that a lot of people go to for sports management, but that's not why you went there, right?
No, I like to joke that the two things that they're known for is Scripps, their writing school, and their sports management school. I did not actually go to, but I wish I had. But no, had a great experience, and they truly were known for, and they continue to be known for those two programs, and been so fortunate now to actually be a part now of their continuing education at OU around sports betting, and so that's been just a great experience and a great tie back to the university. And like I said, a lot of Bobcats in my family, so my whole family was very, very happy with that. So anyway, so I had fast forwarded to, I think, moving to DC and living there for a couple of years, and just cut my teeth in politics and really understanding how campaigns worked and how communications worked and grassroots and government relations and how that tied back to policy. And then had the opportunity to move to Las Vegas. And I had never actually, I don't think I had ever actually been there. And I remember telling people, and they were like, "You're crazy. Where are you moving?" But I love warm weather, and I was young, and it was a great opportunity, and so we gave it a shot. And like I said, started off and worked on Catherine's campaign for Attorney General, and then transitioned that into a role at MGM in 2007.
And so you went on to work at MGM. Was that on the government relations side of things, or was that in the gaming side or sports side at all?
Yeah, so I started off in the government relations department, and I mean, truly worked my way up. I think I was like a manager at that time, really focused on federal issues, and had the, I guess, sort of good fortune. This was back in 2008, 2009, right when the economic recession had hit, and Las Vegas was obviously very, very hardly impacted by that, but did end up having an amazing opportunity. I think they call them battlefield promotions, to actually work my way up in the government relations department. And I ended up taking on far more responsibilities just because there were so many layoffs at that time. And so had the good fortune then of, really widening my portfolio, my exposure, and took on a lot more of the issues, certainly at the state level, and which is a totally different game than the federal level. And I actually ended up learning a lot about the business. And it was the best experience that I could have asked for. I mean, and you sort of think about what's going on right now. And during that time, it was really scary. Las Vegas was decimated for a long time. I mean, just discretionary income had dried up and people were not traveling. And, the future of MGM was very uncertain. And so there's a lot of parallels kind of to what's happening right now. And I think about, just the opportunity that I was presented, and it ended up, really working in my favor. And it wasn't easy. And I didn't have a lot of resources, and I did not have a roadmap, but it ended up really giving me a ton of exposure to things that I had not previously had the ability to do. So I loved that. I loved working on state politics too. It was really interesting. That's where local and state, where a lot of like the business was impacted. And again, just ended up learning so much about the industry and what made it tick, and how executives viewed it. And I think, having that Fortune 500 company experience has served me so well when I have now moved back, or had moved back then, to the advocacy side.
And so you were living in Vegas, and then I guess that it made sense for you to, kind of as a next step, you went to the American Gaming Association after that, right? Is that the next?
Yeah, so I had worked for MGM, and at that time they were getting very aggressive in development opportunities. And the thing that's unique about casino gaming is that a lot of the business opportunities are determined by state regulations, federal regulations. And so MGM had wanted to get into Maryland. And I ended up running a referendum campaign then to pass the legalization for allowing a 6 casino license at National Harbor. And so it was a fast and furious campaign. It was one in which it started where we actually had to lobby the state legislature to get them to approve a 6 casino license. And then on the turn of a dime, actually had to stand up a campaign I mean, literally on the turn of a dime. Like it passed, and then the next day it was like, okay, it's August, and now you've got to actually go persuade people to vote in favor of allowing a casino. And, casino legislation, casinos in general are pretty controversial. So not only did I have a time crunch, I also had not a slam dunk sort of issue. And then on top of that, I actually had another casino operator working against me. So there was $100 million that was spent between MGM side and Penn National Gaming, who was on the other side, who did not want to see another casino built. And it was, I think it was the most expensive referendum campaign that had ever been run for casino legislation. And it was a nail biter, and it was probably, it could have made or broke my career. I never thought about it in those terms, but I think I was young and dumb. So I didn't really think about the magnitude of how it could have all turned out. Thankfully, it turned out in our favor, and we won by, I think, 2 percentage points. And then MGM was awarded the license, and I think it continues to be in their top 3 most profitable casinos in the country. So it was a great experience. It was, I think, what set me up really well then for, looking at other advocacy issues and having learned from that. So I did that in 2012, and then pivoted to the American Gaming Association. And I kind of had looked at, I wasn't actually looking for a job at all. I really enjoyed MGM, and at that time, Jim Murren was the CEO, and I really, really liked what I was doing. I didn't have any plans on leaving. And then Jeff Freeman, who was the former CEO of the American Gaming Association, had come in and taken it over. And the chairman of the board was Jim Murren, the CEO of MGM. And Jeff was completely reorganizing AGA, and he had approached Jim and just said, look, here's the new org structure. Do you know anyone that might be interested? And Jim said, you should talk to Sara. Not that he was trying to pawn me off on to Jeff or for me to leave. And I think the seed, ended up getting planted, and it was a perfect fit. So we moved over there, or I moved over there in 2014, and really, it had been a very, very small organization. It was really only focused on the Las Vegas operators. And if people who are listening right now know anything about the gaming industry, or for those of you that don't, the gaming industry is quite large now. It's in 41 states. There's close to 1,000 casinos. As I'd mentioned, it had really been only a handful of major Las Vegas operators who were part of the association. And so our vision was to broaden that association and to actually include more of the casino gaming industry in it, so that we were, advocating on behalf of the entire industry, not just the Las Vegas Strip.
Well, that
covered a lot of ground, like years.
Well, no, but it's very, very interesting to really think about where we've come from and where we are today. And that's one of the big themes, and why I'm so excited to have you on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. Again, we have Sara Slane from Slane Advisory. She is, one of the top experts in sports betting, in casino gaming as well. I mean, you're really one of the best, and really, means a lot to have you on the show here. And this is great for people to hear really what's happening, because I think the next part of the story gets even more exciting as to where we start to see what you were doing to help overturn the law that basically said you can only have sports betting in the state of Nevada. And you were really influential in changing that. And even on top of all that, tomorrow is the 2nd anniversary of the repeal of PASPA. So I'd love to jump into that part of the story too.
The stuff that's a little bit more relevant, I guess, or more recent. So, it was the casino industry is tough. I mean, it's a very competitive, I'm sure, like, most industries, but extraordinarily competitive industry. And to really find alignment among the broader industry on issues can be extraordinarily difficult. And when it came to the issue of sports betting, I like to say part of the impetus to moving that whole thing forward was when Commissioner Silver came out with his op-ed back at the end, I think, of 2014, and talked about the need then for legalized sports betting. And at that time, the industry did not have a unified position on sports betting. And so it then became my job, per the direction of my old boss, Jeff, to really get the industry aligned behind wanting to see the federal law taken down. And, it was a great lesson, having come from Nevada and worked in the gaming industry and having shepherded through bills and seeing where collectively you can drive consensus with other operators. And so there were a lot of challenges to that. There were a lot of things that I knew that we were going to have to work through. And I also knew that it wasn't going to happen overnight. And so I spent the better part of 2015 first internally getting our house in order, getting the casino industry's house in order, and getting alignment then among all the operators to, as you had mentioned, want to see sports betting beyond really the state of Nevada. Because at that time, I mean, I'm not sure that at that time, but no, at that time, certainly it was a very, very small piece of their gaming revenue pie. Secondarily was that, I think some of the operators viewed the fact that they only had it in Nevada as a monopoly. And so why were they going to want to open this up to potential competitors and lose their edge then for people wanting to fly in for March Madness? So it was truly a year-long process where we had formed a sports betting task force, worked through then all of the different questions with research, and had to, work kind of behind the scenes then to get all the operators to align, to agree then to pursue a campaign to repeal PASPA, the federal law. And it was great. I mean, it was hard, it was great, but we ended up getting alignment then at the end of 15, and then moving forward had thought about strategically again, how do we actually get this done? And I'll pause there if there's any direct questions about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I think was interesting. So you were able to bring together the casino industry, but not everyone was very excited about this, right? I mean, there were certainly, and I just I had James throw up a picture right now of a guy probably wasn't super excited.
We're buddies. We're buddies now.
So that's a picture. We have a picture on the screen of Kenny Gersh from Major League Baseball. So Major League Baseball and the NBA and NFL and others were, they weren't super thrilled about this, right?
Yeah. And yeah, so it was many battles on multiple fronts. So it wasn't just the casino industry that we had to get all aligned. It was also then, how do we move to the major stakeholders in this space and get them to align behind wanting to see this law struck down. And so, we move into 2016, and again, sort of had mapped out. I think that oftentimes what you'll see people do is just jump to the end point and say, okay, we're going to go introduce legislation on Capitol Hill, and then we're going to go lobby. And we knew that we had not laid enough groundwork to go do anything to that effect until we had actually worked with all the stakeholders. So we sort of took a step back and said, okay, this is an issue that is not singularly a gaming issue. It actually touches a lot of other stakeholders. And who is that primarily? It was obviously the casino industry. It was the law enforcement community. It is the sports leagues, teams, and it was the media companies. And so the reason why I had sort of tied together the media and sports side was that I knew that the biggest revenue generator for teams, leagues is the TV contracts, and knew that sports betting was going to be an unbelievable fan engagement tool, just having seen the success of daily fantasy sports. And knew that money is a very compelling motivator when you are trying to persuade people to move in your direction. And so we had actually conducted a lot of research with Nielsen at that time to look at, okay, what is actually the correlation between viewership of sports and consumption.
And I think you were talking about the.
I got frozen out, huh?
Here I am. Yeah. It must have been a picture of Scott Van Pelt, in the media.
Took down the internet.
Right.
So I don't know where I froze up, but basically it was trying to come up with all the reasons why the media companies and the leagues should move forward with wanting to see it. Did the research, backed it up with facts, so that when we went to go talk to them, we made a compelling case as to why they would want to advocate for it. So spent a lot of time with MLB and Kenny and a couple other folks then, NBA and some of the other leagues, NHL, and just, really started to build a dialogue. And, I think ultimately, I think the easiest thing for people to do is to take the short-sighted route, which is we're enemies and, we want our money and we want our cut in it. And I hope the point that was always relayed to them and that they believed was that we really did want to be partners, and we really did we had more in common. There are certainly financial pieces that we didn't have alignment on, but at the end of the day, we really do agree about 90% of what it is that we were trying to achieve.
Yeah, and certainly now, so you went through this process, and so what happened eventually the Supreme Court overturned PASPA, and then how much longer did you stay at the AGA after that?
Yeah, so it was as you just noted, 2 years ago tomorrow, which is crazy to think about how much has changed since then. And that's obviously when the rubber met the road, and the real things started happening. New Jersey had really put themselves in a position of moving very quickly. They had passed the laws. They wanted to be the first state up and running. So things moved, and there's always this debate of, are we moving fast or slow? And again, I come from it from a legislative perspective in gaming. We are moving, I think, extraordinarily fast, and New Jersey moved fast. And so what I ended up seeing was a lot of the relationships and a lot of the connections that I had made at during my time at AGA were now transpiring into actual deals. And I definitely had FOMO. I felt like I did not come from, I don't think I would not classify myself as being very entrepreneurial, but I just had this feeling like I was missing out on something, and that I'd been involved in so many of these discussions, and I knew that I could be more impactful and more helpful to moving the opportunity forward on the outside versus being in AGA. And so I had thought about it for a while and had talked to a couple people about, their potential interest in working together. And I do think that this eventually happens in your career. And for 20 years under my belt, it just felt right. I just knew that, and it took a lot of convincing, don't get me wrong. It was a big risk. I've got 2 kids. It was not, not traditional. I had been working in an office for 20 years to go in or to not have that anymore. It was a big leap, but I had talked to enough people and, just had enough, I think, confidence to believe that if it worked out, great. If it didn't, I could always go back to another job. So, but I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. So was fortunate then. I left in July of 2019 and had the strong support then of the NHL, which was amazing. They were my first client, and they could not have been more supportive and helpful, and offered to do this announcement, which was so nice. I couldn't have asked for a better sort of blue chip client to launch out with. And they've been a great partner. And everything since then, I think obviously the circumstances right now are unique, but it's been a great challenge and a great learning experience.
Well, once again, we're really, really lucky to have Sara Slane on our 76 Capital Leadership Series tonight. As every Wednesday night at 7:00, we bring on another leader within the sports industry. And tonight, we not only have the leader, we have the leader in the sports betting industry, Sara Slane, with us tonight. And it's been great to hear, your journey from, Ohio to Ohio University, all the way to Vegas, now then back, to the AGA, and now, representing and working with companies like the National Hockey League and really doing the big deals out there in the sports betting industry. And you think about, as we said earlier, tomorrow's the 2-year anniversary of the overturning of PASPA. And it's interesting because I remember at our conference that we had during CES this past January, which, my God, I mean, it feels like this scene feels like it was, I don't know, 10 years ago. I mean, yeah. It feels like such a long time ago. It really was. It was a completely different world. And each year at CES, and hopefully next year we'll be back again. We do our sports betting summit with our portfolio company VSiN, which is the Sports Betting Network. And you were interviewing Kenny Gersh from Major League Baseball, and I remember the conversation about one of the things you just said, and Kenny was saying things are just not moving fast enough, but things are moving incredibly fast. And you were sort of joking and going back and forth on that, but things have been really moving. And maybe share with everybody how many states now have passed laws and how many states are live, and what's really going on out there today.
Yeah. And I think that's when you are not familiar or used to the industry and the challenges that certainly from there's a couple things, regulatory challenges. Every single state has a different regulatory agency and body that has their different rules and laws. Every single state is passing different legislation, different tax rates, different platforms, whether or not that be retail or mobile or in-person registration and licensing fees. And so it can be extraordinarily, I think, frustrating to people that are not used to dealing with such a heavily regulated industry. And I think at this point now we've over 20 states that have enacted legislation. I think we have around 14 that are live and running. It kind of changes every day, just especially now given the situation. And it'll be really interesting to see, a lot of prognostication as to whether or not more states are going to enact, given now so many budget shortfalls, not only pass sports betting legislation, but also I think add a mobile component, given now that casinos are shut down and that retail piece is going to be probably delayed for quite some time. So I expect that, we will move more and more in that direction. That is obviously where consumer demand is. You can see it right now in New Jersey and the numbers that are coming out there. I think the last, real month where things were clicking was somewhere between 80 to 90% of the total amount being wagered was mobile and not through the brick and mortar casinos. So I just think that is, where things are going to go ultimately. But you bring up the anniversary and, I think one of the things just sort of reflecting or looking forward, what I expect to change is, I do think that there'll be, it's not a very sexy topic, but it is one extraordinarily important and relevant to the industry, is more streamlining of these regulations. And I can remember a story that Kenny was mentioning, which was, they were frustrated because they wanted to be able to use one of their marks or logos. One of the operators wanted to be able to use one of the marks and logos from MLB, and the regulatory process that they had to go through in every single state and getting it passed. And it just that is not industry to innovate in real time.
Right. Yeah, and that's
so I think that's
yeah. I mean, I think
it's all you.
I know if we were frozen,
we're all still figuring it out here.
It's look, I'll tell you, it's amazing. It's amazing that we can do these things, and this is a great opportunity, to spend time together. Again, I really appreciate it, and you think about from a regulatory perspective, and being able to have almost like so that each state is at least similar, right? To some of the other ones. But then, one of the things that I always love to throw out there, and I spoke about it at some online conference we did a couple of weeks ago, is the thing that is always hanging out there, which is the Wire Act.
Yeah.
And will it ever come down? Will they ever get rid of it? Will it not? Or these are kind of things where some of these regulations seem like they'll never change. But I think the one thing that we've seen in the last 2 years is there's been a lot of surprises so far.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of something that never goes away, and whatever the saying is, death and taxes. That's how I feel about the Wire Act. I just feel like it has been there since the inception of my career, and I think that I will be dying and it'll still be there. It is presented for people that are listening that aren't insiders to this whole thing. There is a federal law that prohibits. It was actually put in place back in the early 60s by the Kennedy administration to shut down the mafia. And the mob at that time was very well known for their illegal betting. And at that point in time, obviously, we only had telephones. And so the way that Bobby Kennedy went after the mob was to implement this law, which essentially said that you couldn't take bets and wagers over a telephone line. It was of the wire. So that then got into this whole thing about interstate commerce and federal laws. And now we fast forward 50 years, how many other years, 60 years later, and we've got obviously the internet, which is not the telephone, and they are still taking that interpretation now of the telephone wire, and they're applying a law that was put in place in the 60s to prohibiting any gambling over state lines. And so that's why we see this sort of patchwork happening on a state-by-state basis, is because the Wire Act does not allow for transmission over state lines. And it is a political hotbed issue. When I talked about aligning the industry, that being our first priority around sports betting, a lot of it had to do with this issue. There are still people in the casino industry that view internet gaming or sports betting on the internet as a potential threat to their brick and mortar facilities, their retail operations, and do not want to see any changes in the Wire Act. So it's a really tough issue. It's I think the reason why we've had such success with sports betting at the state level is because you already have casinos that are there. You already have a legislative framework in place. You have legislators who are conditioned. They are familiar with the industry. They see the benefits that the industry has provided to the state. They see the employment numbers. I think it's very hard at the federal level to get legislators to actively either remove legislation or proactively, I guess, pass legislation that would enable casino gaming. They'd rather sort of push it off to the states to say, you guys have the authority to decide.
Okay, I agree with you that it's probably going to take. It could be something that may happen, may not happen in our lives. But you know what? I do. I have this, small belief that I think that it could potentially happen. But who knows? Who knows how this? I mean, I think a lot of people were really surprised that we're even talking about having sports betting, and we're 2 years into it. So it's an exciting time. And for what we have right now, as you said, you've got 21 states out there right now who have passed laws. A lot more likely coming down the pike because of the situation we're in right now. And there's just some really interesting opportunities. And I think, one of the things that was great was yesterday, or I think it was the day before, there was an article that came out about you being involved with the Rabel brothers and the PLL, their lacrosse league, and what you're doing with them. Maybe share some things that you're doing with them. I think that's really a fun, exciting thing that's coming down, and hopefully we're going to have things to bet on this summer.
Yeah, that's exactly how I viewed the opportunity. First of all, you've two incredibly dynamic people that are committed to what they do day in and day out, lend their support, lend their time. And, I've admired from afar. I live in Baltimore. I have two young boys that both play lacrosse, love lacrosse. And, I've just really been in awe of, what they've created and built. And you see sort of the buzz around PLL and the sport. And so was really pleased when they had reached out about working together. And not only because of, I think, their commitment to the PLL, but also because I thought it was such an interesting and unique opportunity to experiment when it came to sports betting. They very much view themselves as being forward-looking, forward-leaning, cutting edge. And there's so much of that happening in sports betting right now. And to have a league that has the ability to be really nimble, that can, doesn't have to operate within the same sort of parameters. They are obviously a much smaller organization. So it lends themselves really well to being flexible, which is why I think that they were, the first sport that's going to be up in July. So, this sports betting just lends itself very well to them. And I am really excited to see, what we're going to be able to do in the coming years. And so, yes, stay tuned this summer. You will be able to bet on sports betting. We just actually today, New Jersey confirmed that we are an approved bet, or approved sport for betting. So that's exciting. And, we've talked to all the regulators in the other states that have mobile, and they are all, I think looking at the opportunity as well. So I think we're going to be in great shape for the summer.
That's awesome. That's incredible. And then another company, one of the things I wanted to also mention, on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, we have Sara Slane with us. And Sara, you're involved on the advisory board of one of our 76 Capital portfolio companies, U.S. Integrity. That's run by their CEO, Matt Holt. And there was also some pretty exciting news that came out with you and U.S. Integrity within the last few days as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a great. I've known Matt for a while. He cut his teeth in Las Vegas, still lives there. He's a great guy, funny guy. And, I love sort of the vision for USI. And it really fits into one of the pillars about obviously promoting integrity and the services that they're going to be able to provide then to schools and to teams. And so love working with them. And yes, was excited to announce that we have a online education course through Ohio University. And I guess I make an appearance on it. And so that's been great.
Yeah, it's been really exciting for us as well at 76 Capital work with Mark, with Matt, with Matt and Scott over there at U.S. Integrity, and as you said, I mean, to really, their business and working with teams and leagues and universities around making sure that everything's on the up and up within the sports betting industry, because that's what's so important for all of us, to make sure that this industry is truly, everyone's doing the right thing. It's regulated in the right way. and but then at the same time be able to offer this course that allows pretty much anybody to go out and take this course online. It's a few hours, and then afterwards get a certificate and be able to, talk the talk and be able to, and quite frankly, also be able to get a job. And I think that's one of the things that a number of people within the across the country today, because of what's happening, there's an opportunity now for you to get trained and learn about this brand, this I wouldn't say brand new industry, but new industry, the new growing industry across the United States at this point right now. So that's an exciting thing. And then, one of the last things I wanted to ask you, and I'll let you head off, but I really wanted to, just hear from you what you thought are some of the biggest deals so far that have happened, maybe that you were surprised about, but also, just that you're super excited about and seeing the growth of what's happening across the sports betting industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's big deals, and then I think there are some deals that are just they speak to how far the casino industry's come. And I think that the first, it must have been the Fox Bet announcement. I think that was probably one of the first media deals. I think it was the first media deal that was announced. I know those guys were working on it for a long time with the Stars Group, who's now Flutter, who's now FanDuel. I think that really reflected the acceptance of the sports betting operators and the opportunity. It was such a massive deal on such a large scale. And I think the obviously the tie to NFL, for me, having, been there at the beginning and just, sort of seeing the long road that we had ahead and convincing people and really trying to work hard on educating people about the industry and the opportunity, that was definitely a deal that solidified the fact that, this is going to work. Or at least right now, everyone's hoping it's going to work. Obviously, there's going to be an execution part that's going to be critical to this whole thing. But, I thought that was really, like just a huge accomplishment for the industry. There have been others, like I said, that are not maybe as big, but, that speak to kind of where the industry is headed with innovation, with, some of the smaller, maybe tech companies. I think we're going to see and continue to see a lot happening in payments. People will ask me, a lot like, well, if I'm going to go invest in something, where would I invest? And I say, well, have you ever tried to get onto a sports betting app? I mean, it's not easy. So there's been a lot of challenges just from an authentication piece to verification to sort of streamlining all of that and the experience. And, if I had $1 for every time that someone told me they had the best, user interface experience for a sports betting app, I'd be extraordinarily rich. I wouldn't be on this right now. I'd be somewhere else, maybe on my yacht. I don't know. But
you've already made the Hall of Fame. I mean, look at this, right? So you've done a couple, right? And it is very funny to hear, all the, a lot of people with, this looks better, this looks different, but you know what, they're really, as we always say at 76 Capital, in the sports betting industry, we believe there will be companies like a Facebook and a Google and an Amazon of this industry. And some of those companies, they may not be some of the companies that we know of today. They could be some of the new startup companies. And we certainly are always looking for those kinds of opportunities. So I think that seeing all these things and, our investment team with Scott and James and what they look at every day, I mean, we see over 150 new opportunities a month. And it's pretty incredible to go through all those and see how many people are so interested in trying to do the next thing. And I think it's going to really happen. So that's awesome. That's awesome. And I really just, again, I want to congratulate you, on joining the this Hall of Fame, and also thank you, and really want to thank you for coming on tonight, sharing your story, your view as to what's going on in the industry. We didn't talk about at all. We didn't talk at all about the Penn National deal with Barstool.
That was a good one. That was a really good one. That was that was smart. They've got a John Kaplowitz who's over at Penn, Jay Snowden, their CEO. They have a fabulous team. They have always been sharp-elbowed, smart, and I mean that in a good way. Having battled against them in Maryland, they are. I would not count them out. They are extraordinarily talented, and I thought that was a great, really smart, good deal.
Yeah, I think that was really brilliant. And it was the talk of Super Bowl in Miami. I mean, the deal came out that week, and it seemed like it was the only thing people wanted to talk about was that deal. And I remember seeing one of those nights somewhere, and a guy puts his arm around me, and I was like, "Who the heck is this?" And Darren Ravel's like, "This is a good thing for us. This is a good thing for this industry." You're right. You can imagine
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, it was very smart.
Yeah. So, well, again, thank you so much for coming on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. Sara Slane, Slane Advisory. If you are looking to do anything in the sports betting industry, you got to check in with Sara. She knows what's going on. She is the the leading expert across all of that, and it's so great to have you working with some of our portfolio companies, and hope we can do even more in the future. And again, so thank you so much. And before we wrap up, I just want to mention on this Sunday at 7:00, we have a special guest coming on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. She is the new CEO of one of our new portfolio companies. We're very, very excited about this company, which is doing some really, really innovative things within the world of fitness and technology. And she's a rock star. And just like our guest tonight, Sara Slane, really excited for that conversation on Sunday night at 7. And then next Wednesday, my partner John Powell will be on with me, and we're going to make another really special announcement that we're doing here at 76 Capital as well, and really excited about that. And look, we got to just keep pushing forward. Hope everybody stays safe out there, and that's all we can ask for, because sports will be back. Sports betting is going to be back like no one's business. And again, we're really fortunate to have had Sara tonight. So thanks so much, Sara. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a good night.